Well, Lynch Park is really a jewel. We call it the jewel of the North Shore. It's just a great community place for people to come and gather and enjoy open space and the sunshine and views of the water and so forth. Well, the flooding really began around 2018. We had one weekend where we had 5 major floods. The whole park was covered with water. There was significant damage to the seawalls. A few years later, we started getting them annually. This year, we've already had 4 major significant floods. It obviously is getting worse. It's becoming more frequent, and that's what we're trying to study and resolve. Water was coming up the driveway, and it was like a river coming up the driveway. Water was going around the outside of the rose garden, flooding that entire field over there. Water was coming up over here, flooding this entire, and water was actually up on the shell. There's a picture of I was standing on the shell. All this debris was washed up onto the shell during high tide. So you can see the entire field is flooded, which has happened many, many times. And you could barely walk down the driveway. There was 4 to 6 inches of water, but it was also flowing like a river. And I call it 3 rivers because they were all converging right by outside the rose garden, and there was actually waves being created by the 3 sources of water colliding at that point. People asked about the rose garden and if it's flooded. Ibrahim has a picture of what it looked like back in January. Again, I've only seen that happen once, but with the storms that are happening more frequently, I'm sure it will happen again. You can see that all of the boxwoods that were here and roses that were here were taken out. The goal is to get them replaced by yews. They're a little hardier, and so those are coming shortly. But again, our fear is that we plant everything new and then we may get another flood. This will all be replanted. The problem is the more salt water in the ground, it's going to make it harder to maintain. So hopefully we won't get too many more floods like that, but you know that it's going to happen eventually. A lot of these trees are not going to survive because of the amount of salt water that's come into their root system and is in the groundwater. And so, again, when we get to making choices on what we want to protect and what we can protect, we may have to lose some trees and gain some trees somewhere else, move to higher elevation and so forth. But some of these trees have been around for well over 100 years, and they may be lost just from the salt water. 4 times this year, they've had to scrape off, most of the grass and the dirt that was there. So they just reloomed this entire area Thursday before the rain on Friday. Some of it's already been washed away a little bit by the rain. But again, that's the type of maintenance that they're doing on a regular basis just to keep up with the flooding. And having to do it 3 or 4 times this year has been tough. Well, the Carriage House is the only remaining significant building on the property. It was part of one of the original estates. It's where President Taft kept his cars when he was here back in 1910. So it is a very historic park, a very historic building. And we have, in the last 20 years, turned it into a functioning building versus just a storage facility and a workshop for our DPW folks. So we're hoping to continue to be able to do that. But the problem now is with continued flooding and potential damage to the seawalls, the building could be lost, with a major storm. So we're also looking at ways of protecting the Carriage House in addition to protecting, all the other seawalls and areas of the park. Woodbury Beach, which is what used to be, or still is, our sandiest beach, but has lost a lot of sand due to the tides, as well as some damage to the seawalls. And so sand is washing away, and as I said, now at high tide, which will be here in a short while, instead of having a beach, the water's gonna be right up to the seawall. So we have been able to push some of the sand back and restore it, build a ramp so people can get to the beach, and also the beach rake can go down and clean the beach on a regular basis. But as these floods become more frequent, it's getting harder and harder to keep up with.
And a lot of the pictures that you can see, for example, is that the water is reaching up to the level that the state is projecting is by 2050. So we're seeing that water level already rising to what we're expected officially to see in 26 years' time. So it's a really pressing matter.
We kind of realize that there's going to have to be some give and take here. We just can't build a fortress around the park, and and also from a visibility standpoint, we don't want to have 10-foot seawalls and people can't sit and enjoy the views, which is a major function of what people come to Lynch Park for. We are trying to decide on how can we continue to keep this as an open space for people and not lose it entirely, because over the years it is projected that this area will be underwater on a regular basis by 2070. Every high tide, there'll be flooding of the major areas of the park. So obviously that seems like a long time away, but even in 2030, 2050, there'll be significant flooding on a regular basis. Resiliency really means just trying to work with Mother Nature and figure out the best ways to protect the coastline resources. My hope is that we can minimize the flooding to the point where we'll still be able to enjoy significant areas of the park without losing significant areas of the park.